Speaking part three.
Speaking past free hả?
Vâng,
Em không vào cái buổi ôn đúng không?
buổi ôn là buổi nào ạ?
Buổi thứ ba ấy.
Ba em không bận lịch hôm đấy rồi ạ.
Ừ, đâu nhỉ? Speaking, cái file của nó là gì ta?
Cái buổi đấy có recording mà.
Có, có đấy.
Thế thì mình access kiểu gì ạ?
Thế anh sẽ gửi lại.
Ok,
Bình thường gửi một đống tài liệu chả ai xem cả, về chán chả muốn gửi luôn.
đâu em vẫn xem mà.
Trong tài liệu thì không thiếu. Người xem thì không có, đấy chứ còn tài liệu thì không thiếu. Trừ khi hỏi nhầm cái loại tài liệu.
Ừ.
Em muốn đi qua những câu hỏi đã cover rồi hay là câu hỏi mới?
Câu hỏi mới cũng được.
Ừ. Here. Okay, just so you know. I think that I have already put it out there, but well, in case you have forgotten about it, essentially speaking part three is where the examiner is gonna like finalize your score, right? Speaking part one is more about like getting the overall impression and a sort of estimation of where you are on the band score. So you need to do well in part one. You should not hesitate right out of the gate, right? You can probably hesitate and make maybe one or two mistakes along the way, but not, fresh off the bat, because that's going to make a really bad impression. For speaking part two, the go-to strategy is to just maintain the same impression that you have made from the get-go, right? So in speaking part two, you don't really need to, be super like sophisticated with your wording. You need to demonstrate that you can maintain essentially the same level of like, lexical dexterity and accuracy in 2 minutes. Now, speaking part three would be a bit trickier because the questions are decided based on essentially what you say. And as I mentioned, like there are three frames. The first one can be deceptively, challenging because the question is mostly about like most of the questions in part in the first frame are about like general knowledge. So the examiner is going to ask you questions like, okay, so what types of something or another, right? And then if you do really well here, he might jump straight to the third frame, which is the abstract frame. And I think that that's like the safest combination. I mean, from my personal experience, if my examiner starts speaking part three with an opinion question, oftentimes it means that I'm not going to get an 8.5 or a 9 because my speaking part two is kind of like subpar. Okay. So he's only testing for, an eight on an sorry, a 7.5 or an eight, right? So make sure that you leave the right impression for your answers in the first frame. Yeah, that's all.
Ok.
Uh, mum, 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 mum. Let's first consider the first frame. What types of consumer products are popular in Vietnam?
I say the biggest one right here in our country is probably smartphones. I mean, people here as well as in the world rely too much on their phones for literally anything. I mean, from going out to buy things or to communicate online. And I believe that without a phone, Vietnamese people or people in general cannot sustain a normal living.
Well, then, in addition to smartphones and smart devices in general. What are some of the other consumer products that are also popular?
I say that skincare products. I
Hmm.
mean, the trends here for for having a youthful appearance for women or to look hyper masculine for men is pretty obvious. I mean, you can go on any social media platforms like TikTok or Facebook, and you will see hundreds of ads promoting those kinds of skincare products. And since people are so much bombarded with them, um, they are so popular. Yeah.
Hmm. Let's move on then. Another what type question. What types of destinations tend to attract lots of visitors?
From my own observation, I'd say coastal cities like Da Nang or Hải Phòng are the main tourist magnets in Vietnam. I believe that since our country is mostly a tropical country, it's mostly tropical, which means that we have a very long hot summer. People just want to escape the urban heat and go to those kinds of coastal cities to, I would say, to chill by the ocean or to experience the summer breeze that the ocean can offer.
Hmm. Let's move on with the last question. What types of accommodation are popular in Vietnam?
Um, well, for me, I'm no expert on this topic, but if I have to guess, I say homestays, since they pretty much pop up on my newsfeed and my friends as well. I mean, homestays are much more personalized and comfortable compared to other modes of accommodation. They offer a place that is often more authentic. And I mean, for example, if you travel to any city in Vietnam, most people would just search for homestays to stay instead of staying in hotels or other kinds of accommodation
Thank
because it really adds.
thank you. That should be fine. I think that I think that you opted for the right approach for these questions. I was slightly disappointed by the first answer for the first question, but then from outside of that anomaly, everything else sounded pretty nice to my ears. Yeah. Let's do the first one again. I think about when you're talking about smartphones, um, is that like these things are so common. I mean, I actually expected you to talk about them a bit more, but in a different way, that is. Like I wanted you to talk about like specific brands or specific functions of smartphones and smart devices, or perhaps you could have talked about something else by yourself without my encouragement, right? So outside of yeah, that particular exception, everything else felt very natural to my ears. But there were a couple of mistakes. Youthful, not youthful. It's more the you than the youth. It's youthful.
Useful.
Yeah. So much bombarded. Oh, perhaps they're often bombarded with information, or they're frequently bombarded with information, right? Better word choices. Um, yeah, outside of that, everything else sort of checked out. So let's do the first question again. What types of consumer products are popular in Vietnam?
I would say the biggest one right here in our country is iPhone. Sorry, is smartphones, especially those from the iPhone brand. I mean, I don't really get it, but somehow Vietnamese people have this craze for iPhones. I mean, they're literally everywhere, and the prices of these items are much higher than other brands of phones. And also, I think that iPhones have these kinds of special functions that other phones cannot compare to it, like the ability to use double cameras. I mean, when you take a picture or record any videos, the newest models of iPhones allow you to both take the photos in your front view from the front camera as well as the back camera.
Thank you.
So I mean,
Thank you. Well, then, is there any other type of products that is also popular in your country?
uh, okay. So um, I have just lost my train of thought right there, but I think that I would say books, especially self-help books, are quite popular in Vietnam. Um, People in my country tend to
Do you think that these books are actually helpful?
not really. I mean, they are full of cliches, but they are often advertised to the point that whenever people goes to any I would say bookstore. The first book that will pop in their mind or the first book that they will see in the counter will be self-help books. And I mean, they are pretty easy to digest. And because they are so lame, full of cliches, I get that
Thank you.
most people
That's
can
response.
resonate with them.
Okay. Well, first of all, that was the most monotonous train of thought to be lost. So I guess there's no regret losing that train of thought. Your answer was fine. Your first answer was fine, but then when I asked you the second question, I wanted to check whether you would be able to maintain your momentum, which unfortunately you weren't able to.
Yeah.
Um, like I had to, shift gears, not because like you did anything wrong. I just felt like, okay, sure, you provided me with like sufficient evidence with regard to your ability to, extend your answers on that particular point. So I wanted to give, I wanted to move to a different question because you managed to, take out all the boxes, but then you threw them all away by giving me like the most like lackluster answer ever with
Um,
random phrases to stall for time and a boring idea.
I don't really remember, or I don't want to repeat the same idea about skincare products. So I was thinking of something else, and I guess that didn't sail through. Yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't exactly a smart decision. Well, you need to make better choices, that's all. Let's continue with a second frame. Personally, I hate second frame questions for obvious reasons. Whenever, the test starts with questions in this frame, it is a signal. Like, it tells me that, yeah, the most I can get from that test is an 8. Mwah. Okay, let's go through them.
Okay.
Do you think that people will spend less money on consumer products in the future and why?
Uh, Honestly, I think it's going to be the exact opposite in the future.
Hmm,
Um, I think that buying things now has just become something of too easy. Um, with platforms such as TikTok Shop or Shopee, people can just buy anything within one tap, and impulsive buying is so high that whenever sorry sorry my mother called me.
sure.
Okay, sorry. Can I repeat my answer?
Sure, let's do it again. Do you think people will spend less money on consumer products?
Well, honestly, I think that it's going to be the exact opposite in the future. I mean, buy things now has just become so much easy that even young children can literally do it. With the rise of platforms such as TikTok Shop or Shopee, people can just literally buy anything with just one button. And also, the algorithms of those platforms really make people want to buy everything they don't actually need. I mean, people can just be watching a short review video, and then just with one tap, they have buy maybe a shirt or a gadget that they don't really need in the future. So I think that the sheer convenience that the internet as well as these platforms as Spring will make spending uh, will make people spend more instead of less.
Hmm. Okay, that was the most boring 1 minute ever, but fine. Let's continue. There were only two mistakes. So much easy, or so much easier, right?
So
So
much
much
easier.
easier now. And also you said something about the right what?
Uh,
The right of platform.
the rise of these platforms.
Oh, okay, the rise of these platforms. That would make much better sense. Okay. Your ideas were fine, but like I was so disengaged because of your monotonous voice. Like, it was tedious. I wonder if that's how you speak in Vietnamese as well. Not that I have an interesting voice, to pride myself on, but I need to do something about that rhythm.
Uh, completely acknowledge that.
Even that, even that sounded boring. I acknowledge that. Can you say I acknowledge that? As in, can you go higher, a bit higher?
I acknowledge that.
Yeah, I need more of that sort of effervescence. I need that sort of pitch because at the moment I feel like your pronunciation is kind of lackluster, and that might factor in the pronunciation assessment. That's all. Try to be
Yeah,
more, how should I say it?
energetic. Yeah.
Maybe energetic, more animated. You go up and down a bit more. Um, I think that there's a certain charm to those who are kind of like lethargic and nonchalant, but like they have to be like foreigners. Yeah. Like if you are, let's say, if you were a German or um an American,
Mhm.
your lazy voice would still appeal to my assessment. But yeah, from my personal experience, we are like second language learners, and it shows. So if you don't take the initiative of proving to your examiner that like you can do exactly what he does or even better, like you go up and down, you stretch some of the words, um, that you diversify your intonation patterns, you switch like rhythms every once in a while, that it's really hard, for him to give you the benefit of the doubt. I wonder if it's, sort of like racism in a way, but or maybe it's discrimination, or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm splitting hairs and blowing things out of proportions. It's just that, from my personal experience, people with your style of speaking tend to be given the short end of the stick, mostly because of that monotonous voice, right? You can give me all the kind of content that you want. It's just that, like, there's no rhythm, there's no up and down. You're like restricted to essentially one intonation pattern, one rhythm. In that case,
Yes.
seven is really probable. Okay.
Yeah.
But you're more, I think that you're far more than a seven. Hmm.
Yes, I believe so. Because I got a seven in the past, and I got seven in all criteria. So I mean, my teachers, even when I was in primary school, had already told me that I have a very monotonous voice, And even when I go to university, those lines just still repeat. So yeah,
So I
yeah,
guess there are two things that we have learned from this exchange. First of all, I hit the nail on the head, right? Does that add credibility
yes.
to my name?
Mm. You already have credibility, and that's why I decided to learn with you. Yeah,
Uh, I mean,
yeah,
right? You did send me a message a couple of months before the session, and I almost forgot about you.
yes. And
Right.
I almost thought that you had forgotten about me.
I did, but then I remember
Yeah,
you, right? So more points to me and more points to you, but no point to your pronunciation.
yeah,
I think that it's something that you can work on, and it's something that you should fix. I'm not saying that you have to like go out of your way to go up and down the scale. It doesn't work like that. You don't have to be like Cardi B. In fact, if you speak like Cardi B, you will probably even lose more scores because her grammar is horrible, right? But I definitely need you to switch things up every once in a while because I feel like it's certainly within your grasp. It's just that you need to make more conscious efforts to, show your strengths. There's nothing wrong with, sounding nonchalant and boring. In fact, um, I've, I found, damn it, man. I was trying to say something smart, but then I stuttered. A lot of examiners sound boring, monotonous, and they can't even craft like proper questions in speaking part three. But right, they're on the other side of the
mm,
fence. We are the one who are being assessed. We cannot afford to make mistakes, but they can. We cannot afford to
mm,
sound boring or tedious or essentially restricted to just one rhythm. Like we cannot afford to be like one trick ponies, but they can. Not that I
yeah.
hate examiners, right? I think that I've had lots of pleasant experiences with like very professional, qualified examiners who are supportive and get me high scores, right? But then, there are other examiners. It's just that like we are assessed, so you have to do something. You need to bring your best to the table. Okay, just one more question, and then I'm gonna release you. Um, what elements are important when people decide to buy or rent accommodation?
Strongly believe that location is the ultimate deal breaker. I mean, in big cities, the traffic can be a nightmare, so minimizing your daily commute is extremely crucial. For example, a lot of people, from my observation, would willingly sacrifice a big, spacious, beautiful house just to live near to their company in a cramped or tiny apartment just because it's a 10-minute drive to their workplace. So convenience always takes top priority.
Hmm. Well, then, in addition to location and convenience, is there any other factor that can also, make or break a decision to rent or buy a place?
Mm, Another factor in my mind is environment or the neighborhood that I'm living in. I mean, no one would dare to live in a place that is full of criminals or, I would say, antisocial behaviors of their neighbors. That's why in Hanoi, a lot of people decide to buy luxurious apartments in those kind of high residential areas. Because, first of all, the neighbors are all well qualified, they are all academics, or they have a lot of money, so they are
Thank you. That's really
mostly
fine.
good.
Um, yeah, you need to do something about that intonation of yours. But then again, as far as you can tell, solid advice has certainly fallen on stony grounds more than a few times. So do something about it, okay? And I'll talk to you soon. That's it for today then.
I actually uh, do not understand what you meant by solid advice has fallen on stony grounds.
Oh, it's an idiom. Advice falls on stony. It's an idiom to say that like even though you have been like given really great advice with regard to the way that you speak,
Wow.
you have always chosen to ignore it. Yeah, that's an idiom.
No.
Advice
Yeah.
fall on stony ground. Or another piece of advice would be another piece. No, no, another idiom about advice would be to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So
Yeah.
I have insulted you twice. All right. I'll see you soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye bye.